For more than 3,000 years, colossal stone faces have watched silently over the jungles of southern Mexico. Their eyes, carved from volcanic rock, seem almost alive, ancient witnesses to a forgotten world. They belong to the Olmecs, the first great civilization of the Americas. For centuries, their origins were shrouded in mystery. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how did they build such monumental cities long before the rise of the Maya or Aztec empires? But now, after decades of speculation, science has finally spoken. Recent advances in ancient DNA research are revealing a new story, one that changes everything we thought we knew about the Olmecs. The Olmecs left no written record that we can fully decipher. They spoke through stone, through colossal heads, jade masks, and intricate carvings that hint at a complex spiritual world. Yet, their true identity, their genetic and cultural roots, remained hidden beneath centuries of soil and speculation. Archaeologists once called them the mother civilization of Mesoamerica. Their culture flourished between 1500 and 400 BCE, centered in regions like San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes. They built ceremonial pyramids, developed early forms of writing, and shaped ideas that later influenced the Maya and Aztec worlds. But the question persisted. Did the Olmecs emerge entirely from local peoples? Or did they carry influences from far beyond Mexico's borders? For decades, fringe theories tried to fill the silence. Stories of lost continents, foreign visitors, or forgotten migrations. But now, modern genetics has given archaeologists a new tool, the ability to trace ancestry written not in myths, but in molecules. In the past decade, teams from the National Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico and Harvard's Department of Human Evolutionary Biology have attempted something unprecedented: to isolate and sequence DNA from Olmec remains, despite the humid tropical conditions that usually destroy ancient genetic material. At first, results seemed impossible. Tropical heat and acidic soils break down DNA rapidly, leaving little for scientists to analyze. But new technologies, like next-generation sequencing and molecular enrichment, made it possible to recover fragments from teeth and bone. In 2022, one such breakthrough came from excavations near San Lorenzo, one of the earliest Olmec capitals. Researchers managed to extract partial mitochondrial DNA from skeletal remains dated to roughly 1000 BCE. These genetic sequences were then compared with those from other ancient Mesoamerican populations, and the results were surprising. The DNA showed clear continuity with later Mesoamerican peoples, especially those from the Mix-Zoquean linguistic family, which still survives today in southern Mexico. This suggests that the Olmecs were indigenous to the region, not outsiders or invaders. Their genetic profile closely matched populations living in modern Veracruz and Tabasco, reinforcing the idea that the Olmecs were the first to organize large-scale civilization in the Americas using entirely local innovation. But there was something even more fascinating. Within the DNA fragments, scientists detected minor genetic signatures also found in early Central American groups, a sign of trade, migration, and genetic exchange across ancient networks long before written history began. It painted a picture not of isolation, but of connection, a civilization deeply rooted in local ancestry, yet already linked to distant lands through trade, belief, and blood. The Olmecs weren't aliens. They weren't outsiders. They were the first architects of a uniquely American civilization, a foundation upon which all others would later rise. For generations, textbooks portrayed the Olmecs as mysterious, almost mythical. But now, genetics reveals something both more human and more profound. They were not born from nowhere. They evolved from local hunter-gatherers who had lived in those regions for thousands of years, adapting to rivers, jungles, and fertile plains until they built the first great cities of the New World. Archaeologist Anne Cyphers, a leading expert on San Lorenzo, notes that this genetic evidence aligns with decades of fieldwork. Everything about the Olmecs, their art, their architecture, their rituals, emerges naturally from the environment of the Gulf lowlands. Their sophistication didn't come from contact with another continent. It came from deep roots right here. Still, the DNA evidence raises new questions. If the Olmecs were indigenous to the region, what sparked their sudden leap into monumental art and urban planning? How did a farming society transform into the architects of massive stone monuments? And why did their civilization fade away? The answers may lie not only in genetics, but in culture, climate, and belief. Around 1500 BCE, while Egypt's new kingdom flourished across the Atlantic and Mesopotamia's empires began to fade, the jungles of the Americas were quietly awakening. The Olmecs mastered agriculture, cultivating maize, beans, and cacao. They harnessed the rivers for trade and transportation, and most importantly, they developed a worldview that fused nature, spirit, and power. A worldview carved into every monument they left behind. Their colossal heads were not random. Each was likely a ruler, a living person elevated to divine status, immortalized in stone. The DNA now confirms that these rulers were not foreign conquerors, but local leaders, descended from the same people who built the cities they ruled. Ancient DNA hasn't just identified who the Olmecs were. It has grounded them, rooted them, in the soil of their homeland. Their story is not one of disappearance, but of transformation. Their blood still flows through the people of southern Mexico today. The Olmec civilization, it turns out, was not an isolated miracle. It was the natural evolution of thousands of years of human adaptation in the Gulf Coast's fertile plains. But the genetic story, while revealing their origins, opened up an even deeper mystery. How did these early people acquire the knowledge and ambition to shape mountains of stone into human faces? What drove them to organize massive labor forces, to align monuments with the stars, and to carve gods that looked like jaguars and men combined? To understand that, we must step inside their world, into the heart of their cities, their rituals, and their beliefs, where stone, blood, and spirit intertwined to define the first civilization of the Americas. To understand how a society of farmers became the architects of monuments that defy time, we have to step into their world. A world where the physical and the spiritual were never separate. For the Olmecs, stone was alive. Every carving, every temple, every mask carried the energy of creation itself. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of artifacts carved from jade, basalt, and serpentine, each depicting creatures that blur the line between human and animal. Men with feline features, infants with snarling jaguar mouths, rulers emerging from the jaws of serpents. This was not mythology for entertainment. It was the expression of a belief system in which transformation was sacred, a journey from the human world into the realm of gods. The jaguar, in particular, dominated Olmec art. It symbolized strength, fertility, and the mysterious forces of the underworld. Some scholars call it the were-jaguar, a divine hybrid that appears in carvings, sculptures, and even small jade figurines buried beneath temples. To the Olmecs, the jaguar was not just an animal. It was a gatekeeper between worlds, a manifestation of life and death, storm and renewal. In the ceremonial centers of San Lorenzo and La Venta, these symbols surrounded rulers who claimed descent from the gods. They sat atop earthen pyramids that rose above vast plazas, not as tombs, but as cosmic mountains connecting heaven and earth. Each structure was carefully aligned with celestial events, the solstices, the movements of the sun, and the patterns of Venus. Recent studies using LiDAR scanning, laser mapping through dense jungle, have revealed something remarkable. The geometry of Olmec ceremonial centers often reflects astronomical precision. Their plazas were oriented to the sunrise and sunset of key days in the agricultural cycle, suggesting an early understanding of timekeeping that predated even the Mayan calendar. They weren't just building cities, they were shaping a mirror of the cosmos. As their power grew, so did their influence. Trade routes stretched hundreds of kilometers. Jade from Guatemala, obsidian from the highlands, and shells from the Gulf Coast all converged in Olmec hands. Their artistry and ideology spread outward, shaping the DNA of future cultures. By 900 BCE, the Olmecs had become the spiritual and cultural nucleus of Mesoamerica. At the center of their world stood the colossal heads. Not random creations, but portraits of kings, carved to immortalize lineage and authority. Each one unique, each one staring toward the horizon, as if guarding a sacred promise. The precision of their craftsmanship suggests an organized state, with skilled artisans, laborers, and a system of governance capable of moving and sculpting stones weighing over 30 tons. How did they do it? Without wheels, without beasts of burden, without metal? Excavations at San Lorenzo provide clues. Traces of earth ramps, stoneworking tools, and quarry marks suggest that teams of hundreds dragged the basalt boulders from the Tuxtla Mountains, floated them along rivers on wooden rafts, then carved them on site. Each monument could have taken years to complete. The process itself may have been a ritual, an offering of effort to the gods, a way to give form to divine authority through human endurance. And within the sacred complexes, the Olmecs left something even more intriguing: buried offerings. Under the plazas of La Venta, archaeologists discovered layers of jade, serpentine, and mica, arranged in symbolic patterns, sometimes in the shape of miniature cities. They buried these beneath the ground before constructing the temples above them, as if planting the foundations of their world into the very earth that sustained them. These offerings were not random treasures, they were cosmological maps. The Olmecs believed the earth had layers, realms of light, life, and shadow, and through ritual deposits, they maintained balance between them. The gods demanded equilibrium, and humanity's role was to keep it intact. Their religion was not separated from politics. The rulers themselves acted as mediators between worlds, part priest, part warrior, part god. The colossal heads may have served not only as portraits, but as conduits of divine energy, placed at boundaries between sacred and profane spaces. In one excavation, archaeologists found traces of red pigment on a head's surface, possibly representing blood or ritual paint. The color red, in Mesoamerican symbology, symbolized life and sacrifice. It's likely these monuments were not gray as we see them today, but vividly colored, alive with symbolic meaning, the faces of rulers shining in the tropical sun during ceremonies that blended power with the supernatural. Across centuries, as Olmec society grew more complex, so did its spiritual order. Temples became taller, plazas larger, and sculptures more elaborate. But the same themes endured: transformation, ancestry, balance. They lived in a world where every thunderstorm, every river flood, every harvest was both a natural event and a divine message. Even their art of small scale reflects this cosmology. Tiny jade figurines often depict humans emerging from caves or animal mouths, symbols of rebirth. Scholars believe these miniatures were not toys, but ritual tools, perhaps used in ceremonies of initiation or renewal. Each artifact, from the grandest monument to the smallest carving, tells the same story. The Olmecs saw themselves as part of a sacred continuum, born from the earth, sustained by it, and destined to return to it. Yet, as powerful as they became, their world was fragile. The same rivers that nourished their fields could turn violent. Volcanic activity, shifting watercourses, and environmental change threatened their carefully built balance. And within that instability, cracks began to form. Cracks that would one day bring their civilization to its knees. The rivers that had once brought life to the Olmec heartland began to change their course. Seasonal floods grew stronger, the fertile plains became unpredictable, and the delicate balance between nature and civilization began to collapse. Archaeologists studying sediment layers at San Lorenzo found signs of massive flooding around 900 BCE, right when the city's population started to fall. Fields were buried under mud, irrigation canals destroyed, and trade routes severed. The Olmec world, so dependent on the cycles of water and soil, suddenly turned against itself. But environmental change alone doesn't tell the whole story. There is also evidence of internal upheaval. Monuments deliberately defaced or buried, statues broken and reburied in ritual fashion. To some researchers, this suggests a political shift, perhaps rebellion or the fall of a dynasty. The very kings who once ruled as divine mediators may have lost the favor of their people, or their gods. As San Lorenzo declined, power moved eastward to La Venta, a city that became the new spiritual capital of the Olmec world. Here, the architecture reached new heights of symbolism and complexity. A massive pyramid of clay and earth rose more than 30 meters above the flat landscape, one of the first monumental structures of its kind in the Americas. Around it, sculpted altars and colossal heads continued the tradition of sacred kingship. But even La Venta's glory would not last. By around 400 BCE, the site was abandoned. No great war destroyed it, no foreign invaders took its place. It simply faded, like the river that slowly changes course, erasing its old channel without a sound. For centuries afterward, the Olmecs were forgotten. Their temples were reclaimed by jungle, their monuments buried beneath centuries of soil and silence. The great faces that once watched over the plazas now stared from beneath the earth, their gaze unseen, their meaning lost. It wasn't until the 19th century that the world rediscovered them. When farmers and explorers unearthed those immense heads, the question echoed once again. Who carved them? Who were these people capable of such precision, such imagination, so long before any empire rose in the Americas? Early archaeologists, astonished by the level of craftsmanship, speculated wildly, suggesting influences from Africa, Asia, or even lost continents. But over time, careful excavation, radiocarbon dating, and now ancient DNA have revealed a more grounded truth. The Olmecs were the original innovators of their land. They were not a mystery imposed from the outside. They were the foundation upon which all later civilizations of Mesoamerica would stand. The genetic data confirms what the soil and stone had long whispered. Their descendants still live in the Mixozoic peoples of southern Mexico. Their language, their myths, and their traditions preserve echoes of that first great world. And yet, the question remains, how did such a civilization rise, flourish, and vanish without leaving behind a written record of its triumphs? Perhaps, for the Olmecs, immortality was not meant to be written in words, but carved into the bones of the earth. Each colossal head, each altar, each jade figure was a message to the future, not of conquest, but of identity. A statement that they existed, that they dreamed, that they transformed the world around them. Modern archaeologists like Ann Cyphers and Rebecca Gonzalez-Locke have spent decades uncovering these truths. Through painstaking excavation, they've mapped entire Olmec cities hidden beneath layers of time, revealing complex drainage systems, workshops, and ritual spaces that hint at a sophisticated social order. These were not primitive builders. They were engineers, artists, astronomers, and philosophers, all guided by a worldview in which creation and destruction were part of the same divine cycle. As we study them today, we can still trace the lines of their legacy. The concept of sacred mountains and pyramids that reach for the heavens, later perfected by the Maya and Aztec, began with the Olmecs. The Mesoamerican ball game, a ritual blending sport and sacrifice, was born in their courts. Even the calendar systems and mythic gods of later cultures carry the genetic memory of Olmec thought. They were the spark, the beginning of civilization in the New World. And though their faces are worn by time, their silence still speaks. The DNA that once pulsed through their veins now connects us to the dawn of human imagination. Proof that genius and mystery can emerge anywhere, from anyone, in any era. What ancient DNA has truly changed is not just what we know about the Olmecs, but what we understand about ourselves. Civilization did not begin in one place, from one people. It began wherever humans looked at the earth and decided to shape it, to give it meaning, to carve their dreams into stone. The Olmecs were the first in the Americas to do so, and their legacy endures, not only in the artifacts they left behind, but in the shared human drive to create, to question, and to remember.